There's more or less an ironclad guarantee because of cultural and racial similarities between the USA and the British Empire that there will be cooperation in the future. There's an ironclad guarantee that there will be cooperation in the future because of the language, the race, English, the language, English, the race, Northern European, of many Americans. I don't think it's necessary for the USA relationship with the British to make any sort of a pledge. There's already NATO. Some people say it's outlived its usefulness. I was thinking, well, the USA should emphasize cooperation with the European Union. And then the European Union should exclude not only Great Britain, the European Union should also exclude Spain and Italy. Spain and Italy are one nation, and it's called the Roman Empire. I don't know if the French are maintaining French nationalism strongly enough to keep the Roman Empire from building a bridge of contiguous territory across the southern coast of the northern coast of the Mediterranean, the southern coast of France, a contiguous Spanish-speaking or Italian population, or whether the French have brought in enough Arabic-speaking Algerians who are bilingual and also speak French to maintain French nationalism, because I think the Roman Empire wants to build a bridge across southern France of Latino, Spanish, and Italian speakers. So maybe the French are adding some French bilingual Arab Muslims to maintain French nationalism, bringing them in from Algeria and Lebanon. That's a smart move by France to ethnically replace, compete with. If there's any remaining Spanish and Italian speakers, like Napoleon, I think he was French and Italian. So the French have to maintain French nationalism because that is bisecting the Roman Empire. France is between Spain and Italy, and Spain and Italy are too strong. The Roman Empire is vast in Latin America. So France is the strongest ally, the most important ally, not the strongest ally. France is the most strategic ally of the USA. Now, the British Empire is sort of a dependency of the USA, and the British Empire is also sort of a nuisance to the European Union, clashing. But the British Empire is resourceful and socially engaged in South Asia and in East Asia. So the British Empire has valuable contributions in helping the USA to understand the world. But the British Empire can also be very manipulative to make the USA look foolish and do foolish things on the world stage. So the British Empire is our most dangerous adversary. And they are also our closest friend in a sense. But France is really a closer friend than the British, I think, because France is bisecting the Roman Empire. So France is the most strategic ally of the United States. France is more important than Israel, far more important than Israel. And the British, well, they're kind of crafty, and they'll invite the USA to do a joint Anglo-American coalition that will make the Americans look utterly foolish. And they've done it before, and they'll do it again. So the British are a close friend of the United States, and they're also like an older sibling who will make you look foolish. And that is I'm not comparing them to anyone in my family because I have no such close relationship with an older brother. Uh, but the British and the Americans have a close relationship, but it is also a very competitive relationship. France is our greatest ally, and the Americans should ignore the idea of a closer working relationship proposed by the British because it's very close, very close. It's too close already, and the USA needs to push the British away a little bit. The USA needs to look within Langley, Virginia, in the CIA, and some of them should be interviewed by. We should invite French intelligence and European intelligence, German and French intelligence agents. The continental Europeans should have an intelligence agency. Italy and Spain should not be part of the European Union, and Britain should not be allowed into the European Union either. The European Union should not consist of these two gigantic empires, the British Empire and the one that's even more formidable, the Roman Empire, consisting of Spain, Italy, and Latin America. Tremendous economy, tremendous cultural strength, and it's right here in the Western Hemisphere. The Roman Empire is the strongest competition the USA is faced with. So we need to bring in German, we need to have a continental European intelligence agency. I proposed this a long time ago when I was studying the Germans trying to take leadership. And the Germans failed because the Germans were too jealous of the USA. The Germans were too sanctimonious. The Germans failed in the same way that Napoleon failed to have a strong man for continental Europe who was actually a puppet who was being manipulated by the British. And the British brought up Napoleon and the British brought up Hitler so that the British could tell the continental Europeans, you can't be powerful in the region. The British are going to be the most powerful in the region. So I think we need to have a continental European EU intelligence agency, and we need to invite German and French intelligence agents, German and French and Polish and Hungarian, and Irish. Tentatively, Southern Ireland can be included in the continental European Union. But Ireland has to be recognized as something of a hostage of the British Empire. So Ireland can't have full trust of the European Union. But Ireland is excluded from the UK, so Ireland can have sort of a halfway membership in the European Union. Spain and Italy should be out of the European Union, just like the British Empire is out of the European Union, and Spain and Italy should be out of the European Union. And it might make sense for one part of a Latin country to be within the European Union, but I'm not in favor of Catalonian independence. Is that the name of a province of Spain? I'm not in favor of any aggression against the Spanish. I would let the Spanish decide after the Spanish and the Italians are pushed out of the European Union. Allow the Spanish and the Italians to offer a province and retract their national border to leave a population of Italians stranded to be included in the European Union, and to also leave a population of Spanish to be excluded from Spain and included in the European Union, so that we have some Spanish and we have some Italians in the European Union, but we don't want those empires in the European Union. They're completely too powerful for the European Union to allow them to be within the European Union and have the European Union be an effective organization. So the European Union would be led by France and Germany, and Hungary is an important part of the European Union, and Romania. I think that Hungary is part of Romania. Austria is part of Germany, and you can see that some nations are not real nations, and if they have no access to an ocean shipping port, they're not a real nation. They're part of an adjacent nation that has access to an ocean shipping port. That's why I say Hungary is part of Romania. So we could call Hungary just a part of Romania and include Romania in the European Union. They say it's very poor, but it's still a necessary part of the European Union. Yeah, the European Union has to go a little further east, and the European Union has to deprecate their NATO, uh, deprecate NATO uh, membership, and make a continental European regional strategic defense entity, which excludes the British and it excludes the Spanish and the Italians, but it includes Romania, Hungary, Poland. And so this new entity would not be NATO, because Russia is constantly saying NATO is too hostile. And NATO includes the USA. That's where a lot of the hostility against Europe is coming, from the USA. So NATO has to have a deprecated priority from the European side, unless there's a real problem. There's not a problem coming from Russia. So the European Union has to include Romania and Hungary, and other Eastern Europeans, Bulgaria, and the ones that were previously aligned with the Soviets have to join the European Union. But Russia is too big to include in the European Union. Russia has too many far eastern populations to include in the European Union. So Russia cannot be in the European Union. Russia might retain, well, I would say leave out the Baltic nations. That would be Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania. Leave them out of the new European defense coalition. The continental European defense, Europe has to defend itself against too much influence coming from the Roman Empire, too much influence coming from the British Empire, and too much influence coming from America. So what's left of Europe after you subtract the Roman Empire, that's Italy and Spain, and Latin America is the influence on Italy and Spain, and then you subtract the British Empire, you subtract the UK from the EU, that's already done. And also you can't include Russia, but you have to leave some friends for Russia. You can't just take all of what is left and leave Russia without any friends on their border. So some neutrals have to be left on the border of Russia. So maybe that would be the Baltic nations. Russia can't be completely isolated from Europe. So it's a complicated thing to work on, a vision for the future of Europe to be more stable. But these are just some of my opinions off the top of my head. Actually, I've been thinking about them for a while, but I don't necessarily know what's best or what's workable. But I will say that Spain and Italy are part of the Roman Empire, and they are very influenced by Latin America. And Latin America has a lot of influence from Africa, and the USA has a lot of influence from Africa. So the British have a lot of influence from Africa, and the British have a lot of influence from South Asia. So Spain, Italy, and the UK must be left out of the European Union so that the European Union could have some good sovereignty. Now, the European Union wants to have some internationals, obviously some Africans. They want to have some Africans in Paris and Berlin, and also there's Africans in London, and they want to have some Chinese. But the Chinese don't want to be in a very chaotic city. Apparently, there's not many Chinese in London. There's not many Chinese in Paris. Why not? I'll tell you, the reason why is because the Chinese don't say this, but they thrive on the freedom to self-segregate, like a segregated neighborhood. So if you want to have international districts in European capital cities, international districts where you have internationals who can live in foreign nationals who can live in European nations, and they can even have European citizenship, but they have a district of an international district, which is sort of fenced apart from the European population. And then they have a zone, a central zone where is everybody can go into that central area. And it sounds like apartheid in South Africa. Well, I think everybody has to learn to appreciate the freedom to self-segregate and to have some fences, and people have to have um, sort of a permission ticket to travel. If you want to travel all around Europe, and you're an immigrant who arrived to Paris or London, it's good that the British are out of the EU, and Spain needs to be out of the EU, and Italy needs to be out of the EU, and then the EU needs to embrace their far Eastern European nations. But Russia cannot be left without any friends, any friendly nations on their border. So Russia cannot be entirely isolated. But yeah, everybody in the world needs to embrace segregation walls and segregation fences in a way which is harmonious and not hateful. And if you think that hate is the motivation, well, Africa needs to have international cities too. Africans want to have international society. That's why they're going to Paris and London in numbers that are too numerous to racially assimilate by intermarriage without drastically changing the face of Europe. So they have to be kept separate. And Africa wants more international society. And so they can have it with international cities on their coastal cities of Africa, or even in the interior. Well, I don't want to say the interior of Africa. That should be left racially homogenous black, and preferably a core region of Africa, which is excluding those who are mixed with Caucasian genetics. And then China should have a big settlement, of a big colony in Madagascar. And basically, China should have the entirety of Madagascar, almost the entire island of Madagascar, as a Chinese overseas territory. Just call it part of China. And then India should be helping to reinforce Eritrea and Djibouti and northern Somalia. And Mogadishu should be considered part of Ethiopia. And Ethiopia should be investing in Mogadishu. Mogadishu should be the capital city of Ethiopia. So I have a lot of long-term future vision to contribute, but obviously one man can't say all these things should occur, but there's a principle behind it, which is that Ethiopia must not be isolated from international shipping ports. So Ethiopia is trying to break out through Eritrea and Djibouti, but that's not right for the region. Racially, that part of the North Africa is supposed to be Caucasian, with a small fraction of African heritage. It's supposed to be Caucasian. So we have to bring in Hindus to reinforce the Caucasian character of Eritrea, Djibouti, and northern Somalia. And then Mogadishu has to be part of Ethiopia. I guess that's enough for this video.